I'm going to show you how to import CSV, tab delimited, and Excel files into R using the Tidyverse packages. There are loads of other ways, other kinds of files you could possibly load into R. I'm not going to show you them here. I've been able to connect to a MySQL server using the R MySQL package. I've been able to pull in SPSS files. Um, you can pull in files from the web. There's ways to use APIs. So it's just a matter of finding those. But I'm going to show you the most common ones to help you get started. So we're going to work in an R Markdown file today. And of course, the first thing we have to do is load a few libraries. I realize I'm going to clean up my file here. I started working on this before. So we're going to load Tidyverse packages, which includes the readr package, which has the various tools for importing CSV and text files, any other kinds of text files. And then readxl is used for importing Excel files. Then I'm going to show you Janitor, which is one of my favorite little packages that helps with cleaning up and dealing with problems on import. So I'm going to run this chunk of code here. And then we're going to start importing a few different files so you can see how it works. So the basic syntax for in the readr package to bring in a CSV file, you use the read_CSV function. I should note that base R has an import called read.csv. The two things operate very differently, and the creators of Tidyverse will argue that their version is better. I can tell you that I've had problems with the read.csv. I also sometimes screw up and type read.csv. So I'm spending a little time mentioning this just to kind of lock it in your head. Read_CSV is the way to go. So the way this works is you tell it the name of the data frame that you want to create. So this is a name, I'm creating one called crime, and then you use an assignment operator, and then you tell it where to find the data and put it in single quotes. So in my case, this is my working directory. It's called How-To Videos. And I have a data folder, a subfolder in my working directory where I've stored a bunch of data files that we're going to work with. So in order to tell R how to find it, I have to tell it to go to a subdirectory, and that's what that dot does. So dot slash the name of your subdirectory slash and then the name of your file .csv. So this is the basic argument you need in order to make this work. So let's bring this in. So it's going to give us a little message down here. If you have a lot of fields, it will cut this off. You won't necessarily see all of them displayed here, but this one is short. And so this is saying that parsed with column specification. What that means is that our guessed, based on the first 1,000 or so records, what the format of that column should be. And so it found a year column and said, oh, that should be double, and the case number, that should be double, on and on. But look what it did with reported date time. It set it as a column character. And so if we open our table over here, double click an environment and look at it, you can see that it truly is a date time field, but it's now stored as text, which means we can't use it as a true date or time. So we need to fix that on the import. Otherwise, it looks like things came in pretty well. I may also want to choose to make the case number a character field. ID numbers, generally you don't set them as numbers. You only set columns as numbers if there's any chance you might do math on them. So a precinct would be another one that we wouldn't do math on. We'd set it as a character. But let's just fix that date time to keep things simple. So readr has another argument you can add to it called call types. And this little URL right here has some really great details on how that works. What you do is you type call type, put a comma after your first argument, which is where to find the data, and then call types equals calls open parenthesis. and then you tell it the column that you want to change, and that you should type it exactly as it appeared in your incoming data. So if this came in capital letters or anything, or proper case or anything like that, that's how it needs to be typed. And then you would set it to whatever type you want. So here I'm saying call underscore date time. Up here you can see the other options being like call double, call character, um, call integer is an option, call date is an option. With the date and date time ones, you have to tell it the format of the date coming in. And all of that is in this reference page, so I won't bore you with the details here. But basically we're telling it that this is formatted as a month, day, 4-digit year, space, hours, and minutes. And that's how it appears. If you don't put this in or you get this wrong, it will not import properly. So now if I run this, it's going to overwrite my crime data frame because I'm calling it the same thing. And we can quickly look at the structure of the new crime table, and you can see now that reported date time we can see that it's storing it as this POSIX and lowercase ct, which is ours way of storing a calendar date time in, it stores it in seconds or something like that. But if we open up the table now, we can see that it is a true date time, and it's actually stashed on seconds with zeros in it because that wasn't in the underlying data. But it is now a date that will work for us. Okay, let's try something else, another example. So this one is a little more, has a bunch of things I want to change: birth date, death date, injury date, and then it has an age column that I want to set as an integer. The other thing I wanted to show you here is that you can also set default. So you can say this dot default equals call character, for example. You could say all the columns in the table should be call character except these ones that I've expressly listed below. So what's going to happen is everything will be character except for these 4 that I've specified. So this is one way to ensure you get character in those other columns. You don't have to list out all of them. Or you can just take your chances like we did with the crime one. We set this one that we definitely knew we needed to change, and we just took our chances on the rest and hope that they worked out fine. But this is a little bit better way to get it to be more specific. So now we've imported it, and notice that the original data had the fields as uppercase names. I mean, that's not the end of the world, but R is case sensitive, and what I've discovered is it's really a nightmare to try to remember if a column, or even all the columns in a table, are uppercase or lowercase or proper case or whatever. And so I've reverted to just going lowercase with everything to make sure that I don't, so to make my typing a lot easier. And so that's where that janitor package comes in handy. You can pipe in this lovely little function called clean names. Let me talk about this pipe for a second. So pipe is part of Tidyverse, and it basically is a way to add operations on. So what's going to happen is it's going to import the data just like we did in the last round. It's exactly the same. I didn't change anything in there. But then we're going to say, after you've imported it, then, that's what the pipe is, clean the names. And what it's going to do is it's going to lowercase everything. It will put underscores in place of any spaces. If there's numbers, it'll turn them in, put an X in front of the number. You'll see here. Let's bring this in. So now we have all lowercase. And this database comes pretty clean to begin with. It just that they were uppercase. So now they're all lowercase. So I tack clean names on to every import I do to deal with any problems that might happen. Another thing you can do is you can skip a column if you want with call underscore skip. So if we run that, you'll see now that we're down one. Oops, I opened the wrong one. Deaths. that maiden name is now gone. It used to be right in here. So that's how you can do that. All right. So those are the basics of readr. I highly recommend going to this web page I've referenced before for the call types, or even the main readr page. It's fairly good documentation and shows you the various ways that you can tweak readr. We really just here we added one additional optional argument. There are many others you can do, including telling it to ignore the first row or the first 5 rows if there's some problem at the top of your file. You can tell it to ignore the header row and put in your own header row if you want. So there's lots of things there. Let's move on to Excel. So the basic syntax for the read XL package is kind of the same as read the read_CSV. You just tell it where the file is. So here's a simple county population file that I have that I'll run, and I just told it to go into that file and bring in something, and that file only has one worksheet in it. The worksheet is really clean. Everything's way at the top of the page, and so that was really simple. Notice I should probably clean up my names. Notice that they came in as proper case, so clean names, and now that will look a lot better. But sometimes you have worksheets that have a little craziness to them. We're going to try to import this one, which I got from Minneapolis Realtors Association. They spit it out kind of from a program that kind of generates a kind of report structure, and so at the top is kind of all the categories that they set as they were exporting this file, and then all the data is down below, and it starts in row 12. So what we can do is we can tell it, first of all, well, here's the other things, that there's more than one sheet. So you can see down here I've got 2 different sheets. So I can tell it we want the sheet called the CS-C, and then we can start in A12 and go to, well, you see some of this has no data, but we'll bring it in anyways. G5892. Now the other thing to know, which is one of my little pet peeves, is that this will not work if the file you want to import is open. So we've got to close this Excel file and we'll go back to R. And here now we can tell it, here's the file we want, and then a comma, here out of this sheet, comma, and then here's the range that we want to pull from. There we go, home sales. So let me show you what will happen if we didn't put that range on there. I'm going to do a different one here. I guess I'm curious what will happen if we don't tell it what sheet to pull. It'll probably be a little confused. Yeah, so it didn't know what to do really with the headers, and the headers are way down here on row 11. It looks like it brought in closed sales, which is the one we wanted, brought in the first sheet, but you can see it's a mess up here, and our headers are a mess. So if you get data like that when you're trying to bring in Excel, that's probably what happened. So R doesn't like oops, what happened? Home sales. Oh, that's right, I put this in here on purpose. I tried to, so yeah, our home sales file says place 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. I tried to tell it, give me the place column and the 2018 column, and it doesn't like that as column names. You can get around it by putting little back quotes around it, and then it will show you your results. But that's kind of a pain in the behind every time you're typing. So you could rename them on the import. And there are times where even when it's not just numbers, there's other times where I want to rename columns, and so I can do it as part of the import. So remember, we did the pipe for the clean names. We're just going to add another pipe to the end of that and use the rename function, which is part of the tidyverse. And this is a little counterintuitive, but you actually put your new name first. The new name equals the old name. And what's going to happen, remember we didn't use clean names up here. What's going to happen with clean names is that it's going to put an X in front of each of those numbers. So I'm going to tell it change that X 2015 to YR 2015 year. You could keep the X, I suppose. There. Now it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so one last thing here. It is, if you have a tab delimited file or some other delimited file, readr has other options. So like read_tsv will bring in a text file. And you can see this one brought in, and here's an example where, see, it's not showing all the columns. This is just the beginning, but if we open it up, we can see that it cleaned the names for us, and all of these columns off the end are set to double, which is what we want because these are FTE, full-time equivalency numbers of teachers. So that brought that in nice and easy. Last little piece of advice, I usually find I have to just pull the file in sometimes without adding anything special, and then troubleshoot, look and see where my problems lie, like we did with this crime one, and then keep redoing it until you get it to work properly. So there you go, importing.